the immigration debate is starting to heat up as the 2016 election season kicks into high gear. But what is it really like to live so close to a border? Well, in Borderworld, the latest episode of NPR's radio show Latino USA, the team traveled to Arizona's border with Mexico to find out. And joining us now to tell us some more is producer of NPR's Latino USA, Marlon Bishop. So, Marlon, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, clearly this is a very topical subject. What did you want to accomplish with the show?
Well, we want to give a deep look at what it's really like to live in the border region of the United States. It's often something that you might, if you don't live in Arizona, you don't live near the border, you might think of immigration or the border as something as a political issue, or the deaths in the desert as a humanitarian issue. But if you live there, it's literally in your backyard. The migrant trails pass right by suburban subdivisions, and we wanted to kind of give people a little sense of the flavor of what it's like to be there and be faced with all the issues in this very palpable, tangible way.
So give us some flavor now. I mean, what is local life like near the border for local residents and, of course, the migrants?
Well, we profile in our episode a group of, for example, humanitarians who out and leave water on trails for migrants. And when you're walking on these trails, you'll find these just rivers of human stuff. There's jackets, backpacks, there's medicines, toiletries, and it just really dawns on you how many people. There's thousands of people every month walking these trails, and we ended up profiling a few artists who collect this stuff and turn it into art that tries to kind of develop a little bit of empathy for the situation of migrants in the border. Including one woman who collects toothbrushes. She collects, her collection is about 400 toothbrushes, 500 tubes of toothpaste, and it's part of an installation she calls Dignity. And the idea there being is, whenever she shows these toothbrushes to people in Arizona, they say, why would a migrant need a toothbrush? And she says, well, why wouldn't they need a toothbrush? Wouldn't you want a toothbrush if you were going on a long trip through the desert? So that's just an example of one of the kinds of interactions. A lot of people who live in this area also might have a migrant knocking on their door who is lost and dehydrated in need of help and are faced with a choice. Will they help this person? Because it's illegal to do so in many cases. So it's just a very intimate relationship with immigration. It's not this far away thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you made this back in July, and of course the immigration debate has started to heat up right now ahead of the presidential election. Do you think that the draconian policies, the inflammatory rhetoric that we've been hearing from the likes of Donald Trump and echoed then yesterday by Scott Walker actually reflect the feelings of those living near the border?
I think it's complicated. There's a real diversity of opinions of the people who live near the border. I met a lot of people who are very, very sympathetic to migrants, who go out of their ways every single day to help migrants. On the other hand, I interviewed a man named Tim Foley, who's part of a group called Arizona Border Recon, who are ex-military guys who hang out on the border and kind of police freelance the border. So there's clearly people who are very, very, very hostile to immigration. That said, I think that the kind of rhetoric that we're hearing from Donald Trump, for example, is kind of outdated in Arizona itself. It's the kind of thing we were hearing 5 years ago around the time of SB 1070, the infamous Show Me Your Papers law. And since then, Arizona politics has kind of backed away from the really inflammatory rhetoric. Jan Brewer, the former governor, is out. A new governor, Doug Ducey, is in, also a Republican, but he's not talking about immigration in the same way. He's keeping very quiet on it. At the same time, Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who's the Maricopa County Sheriff, who has been kind of a famous hardliner on immigration, he's in legal troubles, and it's looking like he's on his. Most are predicting he's not going to win another election. So I think there are very strong opinions on both sides of the debate in the Southwest, but the specific tenor of the debate right now is, I think, probably a little outdated, actually, on the border area.
That's interesting, Marlon, because it sounds like you're saying that there's a bit of a disconnect going on between actually what people at the border really think when it comes to immigration and the sort of policies that they think actually should be implemented, and the kind of policies that we're hearing the presidential candidates, particularly on the GOP side, articulate. Do you think that that is going to come to a head at any point?
I mean, I think deport them all, which I believe is the latest thing that we've been hearing, is not going to be a winning strategy for any candidate. Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of inflammatory rhetoric, but none of that is about realistic policy. And that's also within this tiny echo chamber of kind of Republican Party politics, and there's Latinos are in a huge part of this country, a huge segment of the voting bloc, and as soon as that becomes a broader debate, I think we're going to see the rhetoric have to change.
Yeah, I've got a comment here from Liz von Notius, who's watching, who says, this is like calling migrants aliens in order to dehumanize them. They're people in need, especially if they're in immediate need. And of course, in your program, you show the dichotomy between this immediate need and also then the people that are actually legally not able to really help them out on the border. Fascinating stuff. Marlon, thank you very much for joining us today on HuffPost Live. And guys, check out the links in our resource world for more information on how you can tune in for Latino USA's Borderworld. It airs Saturday, August 29th on NPR. Now, for the first